The weekend of August 7th through the 9th was the end of a 5-week stretch where I had a regional every weekend. But at least the 2026 PBA Channel Lumber Classic was in Windsor, which is about 20 minutes from my house, so I got to sleep in my own bed. But there's a flip side to that. There is an argument to be made that traveling to a tournament helps focus you on the task at hand. When you're at home, it doesn't feel like a special event because you're doing all the normal routines. Still, it was nice to not to have to travel and not be limited in equipment, but there's more on that later. I would like to thank the Patterson family and the staff at Windsor Bowl for hosting the event. I also would like to thank CJ Pardini and Curtis Woods for securing the sponsorships and helping organize and host the event. They always do a great job and make the bowlers feel at home. Before I go into the recap, I would like to talk about the changes to the PBA Regional program, which provided much additional context to this tournament. Recently, the PBA announced the start of the PBA Elite Regional Tour. No matter what, change always brings various opinions, and it's impossible to address everyone's situation and ensure no one is adversely affected by the change. The Elite Tour was promising bigger prize funds and showcasing top regional players, which are good things. Giving players a clear pathway to get onto the PBA National Tour was also something that needed to be revisited. But scrapping the last 4 months with a new schedule, significantly revising the rules for the Regional Players Invitational, the RPI, mid-season was unfortunate. And at the time of bowling Windsor, I didn't know if there was even going to be a PBA 50 division in the regional program. So that hung over the tournament. I didn't know if Windsor would be my last PBA regional singles event and maybe my last chance to win a PBA singles title. From the time I was 11 years old, I wanted to be a professional bowler. So many of my life decisions were in service of that dream. I honestly thought I would have many PBA titles at this point. But newsflash, professional bowling is hard. Long ago, I decided the best mindset for me is to be process focused rather than outcome focused, which is also hard since everything you do in sports is measured by score and wins and losses. I would never consider my bowling career incomplete if I never win a PBA title. Bowling has given me so much and has been such a big part of my life, and I've had great experiences while competing. I've had chances to win a PBA title, and the latest is this PBA 50 Channel Lumber Open at Windsor. If the Hollywood script was being written, I would have won the title in my last singles event before this PBA Elite Regional program starts. It would have been in front of Tim, Nathan, and Lindsay, the people who, along with my mom and dad, have supported me the most in my bowling journey. The format for the tournament was 8 games of qualifying on Saturday, and fortunately we had enough entries to actually expand the finals field. So instead of taking the top 8 as originally planned, we ended up taking the top 12, and the top 4 qualifying scores would receive a bye into the second round. So in this case, score in qualifying actually was an important part in order to try to earn a bye. We were bowling on the 38-foot bear pattern. As you can see from the graph, it's pretty obvious that the shot was going to be to play out. And given the length of the pattern being less than 40 feet, it was probably going to be important to use controllable pieces. So the concept, the urethane balls, and for me, the TDX would have been in play. So let's see how qualifying went. So concept that's 4x4x0 first game, looking for something that would just be smooth and controllable. Was able to shoot 214, but didn't feel like it was still quite doing the right thing. I was crossing with Rich Corwin. He was throwing a Crown 78, and he struck a lot, and I just felt like I needed something that had a little more pop for me. So I decided to try a reactive ball, and I had just drilled a monsoon with a 2-inch pin, and I used that to start game two. As you can see, the monsoon was actually a re-drill as I was trying this new layout with a 2-inch pin to try to make it more smooth like a urethane ball. But it didn't quite do the right thing. It still didn't go through the pins the right way, and it started to get really tight down the lane, as you can see with that bucket that I left. So I went back to the old faithful, the origin, in the middle of the next game.
I'm B, not.
I threw a 4-bagger with the origin to shoot 221, but then I started getting a lot of 9, and ultimately a missed spare, and I ended up shooting 195 the next game. Fortunately, I was crossing next to Lindsay, so I asked him what he thought I could do to try to strike more. And in his immortal words, he said, just go to the next pair, it'll probably hook more, and your ball will go through the pins the right way, and you'll start striking again. And here's what happened game 5. The next pair was the end pair 23 and 24. Hey, Bob Newman. But that pair definitely hooks more than anyone in the house, so I ultimately decided to switch to the Sublime after going high a couple shots. I've found that for a ball motion where I want the ball to get forward, I have a pretty good 3-ball progression to go from the origin to the Sublime and then to the IQ Tour AI. So the Sublime was the choice this game.
Alert. Really, really,
The IQ Tour AI was the right ball to get me through that last game and post a 210 to end up 193 over, which was enough to qualify third, giving me a bye in the first round as one of the top 4 qualifiers, which allowed me to sleep in a little bit and automatically be in the round of 8. Mark Mazzulla got off to a 2-0 lead against Eric Adolphson, but Eric came storming back and forced a game 5. Ultimately, Mark won, which meant I would be bowling against Mark Mazzulla in the second round. I started the match on the fresh with the Vengeance Returns because it looked like the pattern on Sunday was playing with a little more hook in the front, which also meant they would feel a little tighter down the lane. So rather than starting with the concept or something urethane, I went with reactive. While I stayed clean, unfortunately, I didn't really have much room to strike. So I went to the concept near the end of the game, but it didn't look right either. I was behind in the match when I left a 210 with the physics blackout in the ninth. So I started experimenting. I threw the Ion Max in the 10th. I started the next match with the Ion Max, but when I got it right, it didn't have enough responsiveness to get back, and I left the 2410. Then, when I got it up the lane, it didn't hold. As a result, I started game 2 with 3 straight splits. So I decided to make the strategic decision at that point to concede game 3. Could I have tried to grind it out and hope for mistakes from Mark and pull out game 2? Yes. But when I'm uncomfortable with my ball reaction, my execution suffers. So I figured it would be best to use the final 7 frames to figure out the best ball reaction that would give me a chance to win 3 games in a row. So essentially, I threw 14 straight strike shots in a row, regardless of the spare that was up, to finish game 2. Remember how I said that one aspect of bowling close to home was that I could bring a bunch of balls? Well, I brought 21 Sunday because I wanted every possible ball, even the niche balls, because the margins are so small between winning or losing. I didn't want to have any regret or wishing I had brought that one ball that could have meant the difference for me. So I had a lot of choices in balls, and I threw probably 13 different balls in the last 7 frames of game 2. Unfortunately, none of them looked very good. But then I remembered the one ball, which is really the ball I throw after urethane and concept when they bog down, and that's the Tour Dynamics or TDX. I put the pin and the PSA at 3.5 inches from my PAP to make it early, and that ball is really low flare and smooth already, so it's urethane like. I'd kind of forgotten about it, and with all those balls in the bags, it just kind of got lost in the shuffle. But luckily, I remembered and I threw it on the fill ball in game 2, and I liked how it looked, and it looked like it might be the right one. So I stuck with that TDX in game 3, and here's what happened. It was a comeback from 0-2 to advance to the semifinals against Rich Corwin. I'm not going to lie, there was a little bit of panic that was creeping in when I cycled through about a dozen balls and none of them looked good. But I'm proud that I stayed process focused. I took advantage of the bracket format where score is immaterial. And it proves in today's game, getting the right ball matched up in the right area of the lane can make all the difference in the world. I went from having an air biscuit for ball reaction to having something I felt like I could compete with, potentially to win the tournament. While I wasn't trying to win the tournament, it wasn't lost on me that this might be my best and last chance to win a PBA Regional singles title. But I continued to approach it one shot at a time, with the real goal to just execute the best shot possible each and every shot and control the controllables. I would be facing Rich Corwin, who I had crossed with throughout qualifying. I had seen how well he has been bowling, and as usual, he has had yet another great season and was right in the mix for Player of the Year. And he had just finished shooting 300 to clinch his round of 8 match against Jim Pratt. Fortunately, but understandably, Kim was pretty into the semifinal match and didn't get a lot of videos, especially towards the end of the match. So I'm going to talk through what was probably one of the best matches I can remember being part of. Sure enough, Rich stayed hot, continued to throw the Crown 78 he finished the previous match with to shoot 300. He started game 1 against me with the front 7. It took me a few frames to get dialed in, and I ended up throwing the RST X1 on the right lane and the TDX on the left lane. I was clean through 4, then started a string of 5 in a row, so I had room for 257. So when I struck in the 8th frame on the left lane, I put the pressure on Rich to keep striking. And he did. When he struck in the 8th and ninth to start with the front 9, he had all but locked up game 1, since he was already in the 260s at that point. I ended up getting the first one in the 10th and split on the 11th frame to shoot 241. Rich missed on the first ball in the 10th frame, so he didn't shoot back-to-back 300s, but still, he was up 1-0. Again, it would have been easy to get down after bowling such a good game and still being down 0-1. But I liked my ball reaction and again was really focused on the only goal at hand, which was to make the best shot possible on the next shot. I started game 2 with the front 7. I did throw a well-timed Brooklyn, as you can see here in the 5th frame. Rich, of course, still had a big game going, but he started the first 4 frames clean without a double until he started putting his string together. After I left the 2-8 and spared in the 8th and struck in the 9th, I ended up needing a mark in the 10th to win game 2. Here's my shot. So that took us to the decisive game 3. At that point, with Rich's urethane and me playing in the same area of the lane, the fronts started to hook a little bit, especially on the left lane, and as a result, the back end started to feel like they were getting tighter. I hit the pocket 8 out of the first 9 frames. Unfortunately, I slid by the 7 pin in the second to open, and I hadn't thrown a double through the first 5 frames. Here was my one errant shot in the 5th where I left the 610. But I followed with a 4-bagger from frames 6 through 9. So when I went to the left lane, I had ball in hand in the 10th frame. As you know, I don't look at score, so I didn't know what I needed, but I felt like I was probably slightly ahead in the match. As it turned out, I needed a double to shut out Rich and advance. I think strike 9 spare would have guaranteed a tie. And I didn't realize the left lane was starting to hook more in the front, and I threw a bad shot. I almost got lucky with the Brooklyn, but I left a 6-pin. I made the spare, and as it turned out, I needed a strike on the fill ball to force Rich to double. I threw a pretty good shot, but again, with that early hook, which was leading to less reaction down lane, it resulted in me leaving a 2-pin. So now Rich had ball in hand, needing a double to win. Strike 9 spare would be a tie. He struck on the first ball and threw a great shot for the second shot, but left a solid 9. The result was a tie in game 3, meaning we would go to a 1-ball roll-off to determine the winner of the match. As the higher seed, I had choice of lane and who went first. I chose the right lane since I liked my reaction on that lane, and I chose to go first to put the pressure on Rich. That first ball in the roll-off, I pured it for a strike, but Rich countered also with a strike. So we went on to the second ball in the roll-off, moving to the left lane. Aside from the missed 7-pin earlier in the match, the only thing that I would have wanted to do over in retrospect was my first ball in the 10th, that game 3, where I could have shut out Rich, and this second ball of the roll-off, both on the left lane. And ultimately, I didn't realize at the time what was going on and that the fronts were starting to go. I think in the back of my mind, I knew that that was happening, but I wasn't consciously thinking about it, and so I didn't really make any adjustments. But because I knew in the back of my mind that my ball reaction was starting to go on that left lane, I didn't really trust my execution and I left a 310. That meant that Rich just needed 9 or a strike to win. He left a wall shot 7-pin and advanced to the title match against Skip Pavone. Rich went on to beat Skip Pavone in the best 2 out of 3 match to win his 7th PBA title. Congratulations, Rich. I'm not sure if this makes up for the past couple of tournaments where you led qualifying and lost in the first round of match play, and I wish you didn't do it against me, but still a much-deserved win. As I said, it was probably the best match I can remember being part of. My assessment of success is that cliche that it isn't whether you win or lose, it's how you play the game. And I was really proud of how I played the game that whole weekend. Beginning to end, it was probably my best tournament since returning to the PBA. With the future of the PBA regional program and my future within those regionals still uncertain, I can look back fondly on this tournament as one of the highlights since I've returned to the PBA. And I hold out hope for what is to come. I have one more opportunity at the end of August to win a regional before the new Elite regionals kick in September. And it would be with my son at the Tony Reyes Terry Leong Memorial over under doubles event, which Lindsay, my brother, helps host. So maybe that would be the storybook Hollywood script. You never know. Hope you enjoyed this recap. If you made it this far, don't forget to like and subscribe, and remember to always bowl up a storm.